Hello, this is Grant Rodiek. I'm a board game designer with a small company called Hyperbole Games. I wanted to create a new video log today to talk about a new design of mine that I've been working on since about December called Martian Empire. It has a really neat little PMP right now, and I wanted to quickly go over the game and talk about it a little bit. Martian Empire plays with 2 to 4 players in about a half hour. It involves drafting and a little bit of deduction and secret play. So let's dive in and see how it works. For the ease of discussion, I just set up a 2-player game for us here. So in a game of Martian Empire, every player has one of 4 factions, essentially. The factions are all very similar, but they have different scoring variants. But each faction has a homeworld, and then with 2 players, you play with Saturn as well, which is a neutral homeworld. Then you shuffle in, effectively, a suit, one for each faction. This is the red one for the Martians. Then we have the purple one for the Ionians. Every player gets a reference card which tells them how to play, and on the back it explains all the cards and how they resolve with little hints to which cards are best. And then finally we're going to toss in the neutral event cards. These are sort of the fun spice that came about originally to make it work with 2 players, but they're really fun. There's actually 12 event cards, but you only use 6 each game, so you have a little bit of variety on which ones you use. Now, if you're playing with 3 or 4 players, you would add additional planets like Earth, and then you would add all the Earth cards. And if you played with 4 players, you could toss in the Jovians and the Jovian cards. You can mix and match which factions you play with. They aren't limited by 2 to 4 players. But effectively, you take the suits needed, you mix them up, and then you're going to shuffle them out. So Martian Empire is a game that's played in rounds, a few quick phases in order, and you play until one of the end conditions are met. The end conditions are someone has 15 or more points, someone has lost 3 of their rulers, they've had 3 rulers assassinated. It's basically don't let the game drag on, someone's clearly losing. Or if everyone's lost 5 combined rulers, which is basically like the game's dragging down, people are dying left and right. So if one of those 3 conditions are met, you tally scores and see who has won. So at the start of the game, you're all going to be, you're going to shuffle all those cards, and then you're going to deal 6 to every, you deal 7 to every player, you deal 8 with 2 players. Then players are going to draft until they have 6 of them, throwing away the extra card. The 2-player, there's a slight variant in that you draft 2 cards at a time, and so at the end, instead of throwing away 1 card, you'll discard 2, which means that in 2-player, you have this nice thing where you don't know the first 2 cards they took at all, and you're not sure which 2 cards they took in the end out of 4. So it adds a little more uncertainty, whereas with 3 and 4 players, you naturally get that uncertainty, and you only draft 1 at a time. So everyone drafts their hand of cards. The next phase, you play cards face down, and I'll actually show you how that works now over here. So something that's neat about this game is that you could draft cards from any player, and you could play cards from any player, but you only score cards that belong to you. Every card effectively has a very simple condition on it that when you meet it, you score points, and some of them do things. So this one, you kill an enemy ruler, and you know that the ruler by the little symbol on the top, it also says ruler. You would kill a ruler, and then you get a point for killing one. Or this one is if you are the dominant great house, you get a point. And if you count the number of symbols of your great house to determine who is dominant. So when you play cards, you take one of the cards from your hand and you play it face down to one of the planets in play. Now, when you play it there, you have to reveal information as indicated by the card. Here on Mars, it says you have to reveal a triangle, and that triangle is associated with my simple graphic design, which is the type of the card. So if I play a card to Mars, I have to say what it is. So here I would say this is an assassin, but you don't know whose assassin. Now with Io, because it's worth fewer points, I can say either, and sometimes you might want to say one or the other. So here I could say this is a commander or this is an Ionian. So I would play here and say this is an Ionian. And then finally on Saturn, which again is only a 2-player, you say nothing, which gives you a little bit of sort of hidden mystery. Again, when you have 3 or 4 players, that mystery comes out naturally due to the number of players, but here you don't know what is there. So you're going to draft that hand of cards, and then you're going to play 5 of the 6 that you have, so you're going to lose 1. So it gives you a little bit of room to counter draft your opponent. And because you can play your opponent's cards in a way that is disadvantageous to them, it actually makes counter drafting fun and interesting, whereas in a lot of the games, it's tough to do counter drafting. So here I've set up a quick scenario to sort of demonstrate what it looks like. So in a two-player game, you would play 10 cards, because remember, you draft 6, you play 5 each, alternating, revealing a little bit of that information. So what happens then is you resolve cards. Here, we're just going to do it from right to left based on how I set up the demo, but normally it's left to right, but ignore me, I'm an idiot. So first, we reveal all the cards. So here we have 2 rulers and an ambassador, and then you resolve them from lowest to highest. So we would resolve that ambassador first. And this means that if you are dominant, you would score 2 victory points and establish this as a new homeworld. Well, there are 2 lions versus 1 wolf, so he is dominant, so he would score points, and now this is a homeworld. So then you have 2 rulers. Typically, only one of them would score, so you would check dominance to see who has the most. Again, red has the most rulers, so this Ionian ruler will basically just be placed in the discard pile without triggering. So he scores the planet, and this planet is worth 3 points, but also he gets 1 more point for being on his homeworld. Well, this is now his homeworld due to the ambassador changing it over through diplomatic means. So he would score 4 points, 5, 6 for the ambassador. So that was a pretty good play. So here we have a big pile of 6 cards. And so you would arrange them all. So 0, 3, and put the 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So I put all these cards here to demonstrate how the tech can be really interesting. So there's a transport fleet here, which means whoever the dominant house can move their cards to a future planet if they want. Well, here it looks like we have a tie. So we have, oh, actually no. The Martians are dominant. They have 4 emblems versus only 1 wolf. So if the Martians want, they can move and go elsewhere. And they might want to, because if you notice here, the rebels, this is a really fun card to counter playing large sums of groups, in that he turns off every card after 4. So the Martians are like, yeah, we have dominance. We're actually going to take this transport fleet and go over to Mars in the future. Now, then, you would see the Hunter-Seeker trigger, which kills the heir of the great house, which would kill this Ionian heir. Somebody set him up to die. But 4 turns off 6 and 7, so these just don't trigger. Now on the final planet, looks like red's really dominating this round. You've got 5, 7, 8. This transport fleet has already resolved. And 5 is the commander, which is that if you are dominant, and they're the only ones here, they score points. The heir gets points for being on their homeworld and or with the ruler, so that's another point. And then the soldier gets a point for being on their homeworld. But by and large, their emblems help them obtain dominance, which is useful for gaining ties. So red would have really cleaned up this round and would have scored quite a few points. So that is basically how you resolve a turn. Now, I'm not going to go through every card because that would take too long, and you can see all of this on the print and play, which is linked in wherever stuff is linked by the people. But I want to show you a couple other interesting cards that make the game really neat. Every great house has an informant that is played face up. The informant can be played and you can reveal a card. Now, information is valuable to you no matter what, but if you reveal a king, a ruler, you also get points. So you want to try to find the rulers. But anyways, you also might want to find out, is that an assassin there? Is that something that's really going to upset me? We added that when we found out that we needed just a little more public information. The advisor is played face up to a planet, and it increases the value that rulers will score on that planet. This is a really fun card for baiting people, for misleading people, or just earning more points. It's really fun. The Royal Mimic and the Hunter-Seeker event cards are fun because they both have a dual option. When you play them, you could say this is an event or that it is an assassin, which can mislead people. It is technically an assassin because it will kill the heir, but the assassin normally kills the ruler. And then the Royal Mimic, you could say it's either a ruler or an event. And the thing is whoever's homeworld it is played on, it becomes a ruler for that homeworld, which means it can score for it. It's essentially like a stand-in. And those of you who have played or read Dune, you know about the Bene Tleilaxu face dancers. That's what this is based off of. So if I played the Royal Mimic to Io, it would act as an Ionian ruler. My friend the other day played all 3 rulers, and I had no clue what was going on. And it was a really fun head fake. So the final fun little thing I want to tell you about the cards is that the assassins can kill enemy rulers, which is great because the rulers score a ton of points, and that's satisfying, and you get to knock them out. However, it would then be a huge disadvantage to you if you didn't have your ruler anymore. So what happens is at the end of the round, you remove your heir, because he becomes the ruler. And so you remove the heir from play and you put the ruler back in your deck so that you can still score. The heir is worth points at the end of the game, so you want to try to bring him back with the clone tank, which is also a Bene Tleilaxu face dancer reference from Dune. So that's really kind of fun. It's a neat little upgrade thing. And if you lose yet another ruler, you lose another card. And remember, if you lose 3, the game ends, so that I put you out of your misery. But those are some of the fun cards. Really, the game is about drafting a cohesive set of cards, trying to have synergies or trying to offset your opponent's abilities. But then you have to play them and figure out how to get them together so that they do something cool and score you the points against what your opponents would score. So that is Martian Empire in a nutshell. It's 50 cards plus some tokens you need to provide for scoring. It plays in 20 minutes with 2. It plays in about 30 minutes with 3 or 4. Lots of fun, neat little decisions. It's got the drafting. It's got the clever card play. It's got a little bit of deduction and that hidden information where you don't know what's going to happen and then you get that fun reveal. What's cool is that all 4 houses have identical cards. They have the same 7 cards. However, their cards score differently for different things. So, for example, the ambassador for the Ionians scores 3 points, but it's only 1 or 2 points for the other great houses. The assassins for the Jovians scores 3 points, but it's only 1 point for the other great houses. So it adds a little bit of it changes up the incentives when you draft, and you might be torn between counter drafting this really valuable card for them versus taking your valuable card, or you have your ruler and you don't want to give them their assassin because they might kill you if they find you. It's a really nice mix of counter drafting and drafting for yourself that I really like, and that wasn't necessarily an intent, but it came about naturally, and I really like that. So it's really easy to learn. After the first round, you're like, okay, I now have memorized all the cards. I know what's possible. Now we can really start getting into this like puzzly thing. And the game plays really well head-to-head if you're interested in playing it with 2. And then, of course, you print fewer cards because you don't need multiple great houses. You just need 2 great houses. So the game has been tested about 30 or so times. It's been in development since December. It's going really well, and the print and play is available now if you'd like to check it out. I would love your feedback, and I'm trying to figure out if this is maybe one of the next games for Hyperbole Games. So thank you for checking it out, and have a good weekend.